Good evening and welcome to episode 13 of Reading Between the Lineups, the show that gets to the person behind the Discord persona. I am your host, DRC, and we have got a great show for you guys tonight. And look at that. Look at Chuck. Chuck gifting out 5 subs to the community right at the launch of the show. Chuck, love you, buddy. Appreciate the support. For all those new subscribers, welcome into the clubhouse there. Make sure you join the Discord. And glad to have you. So tonight, my guest is Wait Till Next Year. The Sultan of Shtick. The Colossus of Snark. A silver tourney deity in the Perfect Team world. DLL member. And, maybe most importantly, a fellow Cubs fan. I'm sure you can all appreciate that. We are also giving away 30,000 perfect points tonight, so make sure you stick around for that. We'll do so right after the interview drops, right after it finishes. But first, let's do hit and run. And tonight we've got a brief one for you, but a very, very, very important one. So, last week on this show, in this segment, I shared what I called kind of a big DLL, kind of a big deal. Because we were welcoming in outsiders to the DLL for the first time to come at our trophy. The DLL had been in session for 30 weeks. And in those 30 weeks, despite being matched up with BFF, with OL, with other Perfect League stalwart teams, despite having Rich Grisham in there for multiple weeks, no non-DLL member had ever won. And so Walnut put out a siren call, welcomed people to step up to the line, and step up to the line they did. Now, some people found themselves on the wrong end of the challenge. Some people did get relegated. Some people are walking around the Discord with an image not of their choosing because they jumped into the Nut Up or Shut Up challenge and didn't find it to be as friendly as they were hoping. But there were 2 teams, 2 outsiders made the playoffs. And one of those teams won the whole darn thing. King Julian of the Highland Deer walks into the DLL last week, works his way through incredible team management to the number 1 seed on his side of the conference, and then proceeds to beat me in the first round, in 5 games, I might add. Then, trying to remember who he played in the second round. I don't recall at the moment. Still dealing with the disappointment. And then takes down Mac Jacks in the World Series to make the Nut Up or Shut Up a 1-week challenge and tear down everything that the DLL had built up. So congrats to King Julian, and nothing but shame. Shame, shame, shame for everyone in the DLL for letting this happen. But in all seriousness, for the people that jumped in there and had a good time, it was a lot of fun. It was a really nice way to spice up the week. Here we are in January, and it felt like we were right in the middle of the game cycle again. It was really exciting to have the outsiders in there. There was great banter in Discord, and it was a ton of fun. And unfortunately for the DLL, unfortunately for me, who was one of King Julian's playoff victims, the challenge was a one and done, one and win for King Julian. But still, it was a ton of fun. And so thanks to everyone who participated. Thanks to the people who followed along. And congrats to King Julian, and I'll let you know when I'm no longer salty about it. It's going to take some time, though. So, quick reminder on the broadcast schedule. On Thursdays, I do This Week in Perfect Team. On Sundays, I broadcast the Perfect League World Series on the Out of the Park Twitch channel. And then on Tuesdays, we do this show, and next week's guest will be announced at the end of the stream. Quick reminder, join the Discord. So we've got 5 new subs. 5 new subs that Chuck just gifted out there. And you don't have to be a sub to join the Discord, but you do get access to more channels to contribute to more channels when you are a sub. So check out the Discord. I just linked it within the chat here. And in this Discord, we talk about the game. We talk about these shows. I've even got some channels that haven't even been touched yet for fantasy football and baseball. So maybe we'll get into that soon. But that should be a ton of fun. All right, let's go ahead and load up Mr. Wait Till Next Year. And we will get this show on the road. Joining me tonight for reading between the lineups is Wait Till Next Year. How you doing tonight, man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, DRC. It's flattering to be on your show.
Oh, well, it's an honor to have you. Wait Till Next Year of the Silver Tournament, royalty of DLL lore. I mean, I feel like I need to be thanking you. So why don't you start off this interview by telling us a little bit about the person behind the screen name?
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Josh. I currently live and work in La Crosse, Wisconsin. So that's at least where that part of my team name comes from. I enjoy getting outside when I can. It's a great place to hike and bike outdoors when the weather's nice. Um, I'm a big reader. I just started reading Game of Thrones,
Ooh,
and that's
nice.
actually excellent. I had held off for a while because it's such a pop culture thing. I didn't know if it was worth getting into it or not. But reading, keeping up on the news, and of course, sudoing everyone that I can find when I'm gaming. So
Absolutely, yeah. So you're a Wisconsinite. How long have you been playing Out of the Park?
I have been playing. I think my first out of the park was OOTP 12, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm not as long tenured as some of the um, people who've been with the title since the very beginning. But I'm also a little bit longer in the tooth than some who have started playing since PT started a few years ago. So it's really a fun game. I enjoy it.
So you get into Out of the Park 12. Now, my experience was having played a couple of the base game versions in the past. I think my first ever was like Out of the Park 10, and then maybe I picked up one in like 15 or 16. And I just kind of ran it like it was just a casual computer game, trying to make the Cubs great and brilliant and winning the World Series as many times in a row. Whereas I've learned since then that so many people played it and really broke it down and hacked it and used the sandbox mode to really eke out like how to be successful and manage the game itself, not just the fantasy element of running a team. Now, how long did it take you in playing Out of the Park, the base game, before you kind of moved into that latter version and started really trying to understand the game mechanics themselves?
That's a really good question. I think everyone's sort of, journey into OOTP is very different because it's such a layered game. There are just so many things to explore. And I think you hit it on the head when you said the word sandbox. I think the greatest strength of this game is that it's a sandbox and people can play it in so many different ways. And I think I had sort of grown up being a console gamer, mostly not a computer gamer. So I was more used to things like, RBI baseball on regular Nintendo and um, Baseball Simulator 1000, if you guys remember that old title. A bunch of games like that. And then, finally getting into things like the show more recently. But I had heard of OOTP, but I didn't really understand it. So I think part of how I kind of came about understanding it is I was like, what do you mean there's no gameplay? How could that be fun? Right. so so I think that's kind of where I started. And then I just got it and I was like, oh, this thing is deep. And then it just became a matter of kind of finding whatever niche that I was feeling for that given playthrough. Um, one of the things that I've enjoyed doing when I was new to the game is I'd make a fictional league. There's some really great threads on the OOT developments forum that have custom made artwork, so like logos and uniforms, and I just sort of scroll through there, looking wistfully at all the designs, and I'd make new teams to fit the new logos, and I would fast sim through the game. Basically, I'd start in like 1901, when the AL became a thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I would just recreate Major League history with a bunch of fictional dudes and see like who's going to be the Babe Ruth, and when the year of the pitcher came, who's going to be that Bob Gibson. So that those were kind of things that I really enjoyed, and it's certainly a process. It takes I've said before, it takes months, if not years, to really dig into the innards of the game and start to understand. I mean, there's still things that I don't really understand, but it's quite a journey. This game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find the modality with which you played, where you were basically rewriting baseball history and then coming up with a completely fictional character who ends up working their way up to be the Hank Aaron or the Babe Ruth or the Bob Gibson. I think that's super interesting. My mind was always focused on like, okay, the Cubs stink now because it's 2010 or whatever year I was playing. I want to be the guy that made them successful going forward. Now, did you go down that path too of trying to make a major league team using real life players and then obviously fictional players into the future? Did you go down that path too?
I did, but when the Cubs were good, and that era has come to a close, I'm sad to report. But when the Cubs were good, the challenge wasn't really there. So I
Right.
think when you take on a team, you really want the turnaround. You want to like shed all your overpriced, overaged talent, and you want to build something from scratch. And
Hmm.
so since at least 2015 or so, maybe even things were starting to show promise in 2014. Um, the Cubs haven't really been a challenging rebuild, and
Hmm.
so I think that the way I would scratch that itch is I would within my fictional universe, I would take on an expansion team, and I would go through the historical record, and whichever team was or I would take over whichever team was the worst if I didn't do an expansion team, and I would try to turn them around. So I think that added challenge of trying to turn something that is lacking in talent and assets, and turn it into a powerhouse, um, is definitely one of the cool things you can do.
So, how did you become an in real life Cubs fan, living up in La Crosse, Wisconsin?
Well, I'm actually a native Illinoisan, so I grew up in a town called Waukegan,
Hmm.
which if you're from Naperville, you've heard of the place,
Hmm.
but right up on the lake there, just a little bit south of Wisconsin. And so I actually grew up a Packer fan and a Cub fan. Um, and I was actually a little bit of a White Sox fan too, I'm sad to say, at this point in my life. But when I was growing up, it didn't seem, maybe this was kind of the my childlike ignorance, but it didn't really seem like you had to pick the White Sox or the
Hmm.
Cubs. That only kind of came when I was quite a bit older, and I chose the only way I could choose. But um, I think that I grew up a fan of both the Cubs and the White Sox, and you know I was really lucky because I lived in a subdivision growing up where there were just tons of kids my age,
Hmm.
and we would always be out playing, doing our wiffle ball games and our going inside playing sock baseball with those little souvenir bats.
Hmm.
Playing all kinds of different sort of situational games like rundown games and pickle and stuff like that. And so, we'd go inside and watch the Cubs on WGN in the spring after school. And I think all of that sort of contributed to it. And I think why I became a Cubs fan only. I don't hate the White Sox or anything, but I think that fire sale trade they made in the '90s.
Hmm.
You might remember
I do, yeah.
when they traded Roberto Hernandez and what Ray Durham and those guys to the
Hmm.
Giants. Um, that was kind of like at the time, that was pretty unprecedented.
Hmm.
So I think that sort of put a nail in any White Sox fandom I had back when I was, a kid.
It's interesting because trades like that have become way more commonplace. I mean, look no further than the Yu Darvish trade the Cubs just did. Here's a team coming off a playoff berth, walking into a season with the NL Central seemingly as weak as ever, and you take your best pitcher and you salary dump him.
You know, I'm part of me is just happy for you, Darvish, that he found, he's like he found his groove again, because he took a lot of crap
Oh yeah.
from Cubs fans. I mean, like, he was enemy number one for me his first year or so,
Hmm.
and then we find out that he has this medical condition that the Cubs failed to diagnose. So he's going out there, every fifth day or trying
Hmm.
to, and he's got something loose in his arm. And once they fixed that and he got his confidence back, he showed what he could do in the National League. But um, yeah, I mean the Cubs, these windows of contention are cyclical, and
Hmm.
assuming that baseball and pro sports gets back to some semblance of normalcy next year and the year after, we can be looking for that next upswing as Cubs fans. So
I wouldn't hold your breath because I think it could be a couple of years out, given the state of the farm. But I didn't bring you on here to talk too much Cubs, even though I knew we'd go there, and I actually have more Cubs questions for you. But before we get to those, you mentioned that you played a lot of baseball growing up, and you had a lot of kids. Nice cup, by the way. You had a lot of kids in your neighborhood, right around your same age, and all playing the sport. So I'm curious if you were like me and you were out on the sandlot or on the baseball field, imitating Cubs batting stances, and which of those stances and which of those players were you really trying to emulate?
yeah, I mean Hector Villanueva,
Hmm.
remember lefty batting catcher?
Absolutely.
Um, he's got kind of a little Julio Franco
Hmm.
type thing in his kind of a hand position and all that. Um, they were just it wasn't so much necessarily imitating the motion is we'd call out who we were and then hit a home run, or we'd call out who we were and hit a strikeout. Like the age old playing pickup basketball. Like,
Yep.
I'm Michael Jordan, and I'm Larry Bird. That you would do before a pickup game when you were like 8. So
Yeah, so every Cubs fan has like that golden era of when they became a Cubs fan, when they got super duper invested, borderline obsessed. And for me, that era was really late 80s, early 90s. And so for me, it's like Sandberg, Grace, Dunston. Like that is peak Cubs to me. And I love Sammy Sosa. Like I love my children. But for me, it's like Sandberg, Grace, Dunston was my era. What was it for you?
I think we're about the same age, so I'd have to say the same thing. I'd say Ryan Sandberg is probably my all-time favorite player.
Hmm.
I think he might still hold the record for consecutive errorless games by a
Hmm.
second baseman. I'm not positive about that, but I remember that was a big deal back when he was playing.
But
Um,
that high
Mark,
error rating isn't very valuable in the game for defense.
well, what's his range? Is he 1 point of range more than the next guy? That's all. That's all anyone cares about. So, um, but yeah, that era for sure. Jerome Walton, remember when he
Hmm.
was the
Rookie of the
the
year.
next the next great hype?
Hmm.
Before we went through a series of great hypes, and the Gary Scotts and the Kevin Ories and the Brooks Kieschnicks and all the talents
Can't forget
that
Corey
came through in the
Patterson
'90s.
too.
But maybe if anyone's going to give Sandberg a run for his money, for me it would be Kerry Wood,
Hmm.
because I think every Cubs fan remembers where they were when they heard of that game that he pitched, which is arguably the best game in Major League history, when he struck out 20 Astros.
Where were you?
I was at tennis practice. I was at tennis practice, and my assistant coach, he's like, get over here," and he had the radio on in our travel van, and we huddled around and we were listening to, basically, the game was over by then and they were celebrating,
Hmm.
but it's just like 20 strikeouts. That's just ridiculous, and I think he came out and struck out, what, 13 the next game after that. So
Yeah.
it's
Hmm.
it's incredible, the peak he had in those short years.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Every Cubs fan does know where they were. My story for this one was I was in typing class. So I'm in whatever, I don't even remember what grade it was. So it was 98.
Keyboarding, they call it.
Keyboarding, yeah, I think they called it
Yeah.
keyboarding. And so, the purpose of the class was to get you typing on the home keys and then calculating your words per minute, because apparently that was going to be an extremely valuable skill to have. But I learned that there was a way to open an internet browser. And at the time, MLB.com didn't even have like a non-text based, actual media based website. Like when you wanted to go check a box score or follow a game, it really did just look like a black and white screen. So I was able to have that up and be toggling back between that and my typing program. And it was crazy because Kerry Wood was striking out everyone, and then Shane Reynolds was striking out everyone, and then Kerry Wood was striking out everyone. Like, I think between Wood and Reynolds, they ended up over 30 strikeouts. It was an absolutely incredible game. And at a certain point, keyboarding ends and it's time to get on the bus and rush home. And of course, you don't have a cell phone. So the whole time you're rushing home, you're like, well, I wonder what's going on. Is anyone hitting the ball? Is Kerry Wood still killing it? And by the time I get home, I see that there's a hit on the board because Kevin Ory let the ball go under his glove. But I was able to watch the rest of the game, and it was just an unbelievable experience as a Cubs fan. And I think you're right that Kerry Wood really has a seat at the table of anyone around our age for their inner circle of most beloved Cubs.
Yeah, I mean, you can still watch that game on the internet. Sometimes they'll play it on like MLB Network, and I would, any of you guys that are watching this that are kind of younger and haven't seen it, if you want to see a ball move in a diabolical way, watch that game. Those sliders were out of this world.
Yeah, it's funny as I watch it now, it's almost like I'm looking for the mechanical flaw that ended up being his undoing. Like getting that type of movement on a high 80s curveball or on a fastball that pops out of his hand at 100 like that. It's just like, okay, why was this so dominant and so perfect on this day and for many other days in his career, but was just not anywhere near sustainable for his body to allow him to still do it? Because you just don't see pitches that moved like his pitches moved that day. You just don't see it.
And then, there was the, 2003 series against the Marlins that we should never talk about. But, seeing him hit home runs as a pitcher in that series, trying, pitching deep into, I think it was game 6. I mean, he's had some pretty high moments. Now, he did get torched, pitching the ball that game. But,
yeah, I mean, at this point, there's no one listening to us anymore anyway. Everyone has tuned out the Cubs talk, and they've already disconnected. So I'll continue down this path. Okay. But that home run that Kerry Wood hit in Game 6, and this is probably going to sound very Cubs fan-y of me for how defeatist it is, but Kerry Wood starts that game. The Cubs, they lose the lead. I don't know if they ever had the lead, but they go down. I want to say it's 5-3, Cubs in a hole. And then Kerry Wood comes up and hits a home run to tie the game. So whereas like we're in Game 6 and we're already starting to have all of our Cubs fan emotions that everything the other shoe's about to drop and everything's about to become the hellhole that has been our entire fandom. And Kerry Wood hits that ball into the left field bleachers after working a long at bat and a long count versus I want to say it was like Mark Redmond or some junky Marlins pitcher. Like that to me was perhaps the best moment in my Cubs fandom, because where all hope was starting to be lost, you had your pitcher come up, work a hell of an at bat, put the ball in the seats, and I've never heard Wrigley louder on TV. Could have been what they were doing with the audio that day, I don't know. But just that moment as a Cubs fan sticks out as maybe my second favorite moment as a Cubs fan ever.
And for those we've already lost, I think Mark Redmond is a special edition gold card that you can win in OTP. So.
Oh, man. So speaking of Cubs glory, where'd you watch Game 7 in 2016? What was that like for you?
I was at home, and that's the only time in my life that I have yelled to the point I almost passed out. Like I had to literally take a stop for a few seconds because and you get choked up thinking about it. But sometimes you cheer just supposed to cheer. that was something else. And I still have the newspaper of them piling on hung up on the wall. So it was an incredible feeling,
Yeah, and for it to happen the way that it happened was just unbelievable. In a crazy game, you have the Rajai Davis home run off of Aroldis Chapman, just about the most unlikely consequence that can happen. Like if Rajai Davis faces Aroldis Chapman in his prime 1,000 times, how many home runs does he hit? One?
Let's see the matchup thing that you have on that.
Get the matchup analyzer.
There you go, the analyzer. He'd be all in the red for sure.
Oh my gosh.
Deep dark red.
Deep and dark red. Hey, I'm curious. Do you have some deep Matt Clement love, or is that just a shtick that's been running this whole game cycle?
I mean, hopefully people understand that 50% of my participation in, the Discord is shtick. I mean, hopefully people are taking all this tongue in cheek. That Chris isn't going to bed at night thinking, God, why won't he leave me alone about this? But I mean, I do like Matt Clement. I would like to see a Matt Clement card. I think that he was worthy enough of a player, and he'd probably fit in somewhere in the middle, like the bronze, silver, gold tier. And he had that one really nice year in 2004, which is a really bummer of a year for Cubs fans because
Hmm.
we were juiced up from 2003, and then we brought in Greg Maddux, and then the team took a nosedive at the end of the season. I went to a Cubs versus Reds game, like in September. I took my brother for his birthday, and Mark Pryor struck out I think 13 Reds, and we lost 1-0 or 2-1 or something. Like it was like no matter what we did, we weren't going to win.
Hmm.
But that year, what I took from that year is Matt Clement was one of our most consistent pitchers. Like we were highly touted for the we've got Wood and Pryor and Maddox and
Hmm.
Zambrano, but oftentimes it was Matt Clement sweating profusely on the mound, pitching way more pitches than he needed to, but getting the job done. So he was a good Cub pitcher for a couple years there.
He really was. And then he goes to Boston and has a good season there. So I
Hmm.
agree. I am on team Matt Clement card. I just wanted to know more about the story behind it. So another thing that I want to know the story behind is, what is the connection to frogs?
Um, you know, there's not really a deep reason. I living in La Crosse, I figured that my city name would be you know, the 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 first name. So
Hmm.
I had to come up with a mascot, and I was like, well, La Crosse sounds kind of French. What are French people known for? And the only animal I could think of, was a frog. So I was
Sure.
like, okay, well, I was a little concerned that it might overlap with the sort of the dark web type usage of frogs and stuff like that. But the design was pretty cool. And again, I'll plug the OOTP developments boards for people playing the game. If you want custom artwork, uh, that's where I found. I just looked through and I was like, okay, that frog looks pretty sweet. And there's tons of logos like that. So something that fit my lacrosse and that looked cool, and maybe something that wasn't like overused because like I mean tigers. How many tigers were there going to be?
Hmm.
So I didn't want something that everyone else was going to be.
So did you start with lacrosse frogs and decide, you know what, that just doesn't sound menacing enough?
Kind of, kind of, and I'm not a Notre Dame fan, but I've always kind of liked the sound of Fighting Irish.
Hmm.
It's kind of it just has some pep to it. Some zing, some panache.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I put it in there.
So speaking of these fighting frogs, they have really proven to be quite the powerhouse as it comes to silver tournaments. So why did you choose silver to be your battleground of domination in the tournament realm?
Well, first of all, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that there are several really good teams in silver. And the competition has even got more brutal since the end of the Perfect Team Champion Series because I think some of the teams that either got crowded out or got sick of gold or sold off their gold teams have migrated into silver. And DLL had like one day where all you guys in DLL were like, I'm going to join the silver tourney. And so we had like, some pretty good competition there. Um, so there are a lot of really good teams that I played, over and over and over again. Uh, but as far as why I chose it, I think that, early in the cycle, and, I'm just kind of putting this out there, it's not a judgment on anyone or anything who plays any other styles, but I think early in the cycle, people had this conception that, you know, iron and bronze tourneys were these huge RNG fests
Hmm.
that you could build a team, and what was the point? Because you're just gonna flip a coin anyway in the
Hmm.
in the end. And I think people have shown that that's maybe not true. Um, now that we have more data to go on,
Hmm.
and then I figured, well, if I go in the opens, I'm just gonna be beating my heads against the same teams that I'm competing with in league play. So that doesn't really, do a lot for me. And diamond is expensive. To
Mm-hmm.
make a diamond team, you really need to shell out. So it's kind of somewhere in the middle, kind of silver or gold. And the beginnings are fuzzy, but I must have had more initial success with silver, or maybe the cards were cheaper,
Mm-hmm.
that I started playing that, and I was like, well, I'm playing this. I should try to get good at it, and focus on it. And so that's kind of where I've been ever since.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, in prepping for this and talking with some other people, one of them termed you as a secret modeler analyst type. Covert almost. So maybe not the guy that's going to be on the OOTP Discord posting some stats about this or stats about that, but behind the scenes you're doing a lot of that. Is that something that you've been doing the entire game cycle, or something that you've grown into over the course of the year?
So first of all, there are guys out there who are just crazy good at modeling and analyzing data and pulling data and collecting data, and I would not put myself in that group. I'm a little bit more of a novice. I just learned maybe a couple not years ago, a couple months ago, how to put a pivot table together in Excel, and it's really easy for anyone who's watching and hasn't done it. I mean, you basically click a button, and then you spend a couple hours trying to think about how you want your rows and columns to be,
Hmm.
and that's maybe add some conditional formatting and you're good. So it's not hard, but it's not something that I'd ever done. I'd been more of kind of a brute force, copy paste, have like 10,000 lines of data type of thing. Um, but I think I started just sort of, because my team did okay in Perfect Team 20, where the pyramid was a lot more conducive to everyone win a perfect league championship.
Hmm.
Um, and so I started tracking cards maybe toward the end of the cycle in Perfect Team 20, just kind of writing in basic stuff about them in my spreadsheet, like the overall and the handedness and I think a lot of us, our spreadsheets originated from someone named Davey,
Hmm.
who have never met, but he was someone who did a lot of the early kind of um, brainiac work with
Hmm.
Perfect Team and making spreadsheets and deriving formulas and all kinds of stuff. So, I just kind of had that, and I've been sort of just messing around with that ever since.
What data do you think is most valuable when looking at it in that extracted form?
Yeah, I think that's the question. If I knew, I'd probably be winning more, right? But I think that there's a lot of different ways you can slice it, and part of the fun is just you know trying things out. Creating a hypothesis and tracking it down. Proving yourself wrong, or proving that you might not be wrong. So, clearly the meta, is very well established in the game, that you're not going to win without pitching and defense. You're not going to dingers your way to
Hmm.
perfect league title. It's just not ever going to happen. I mean, so you need your defense, you need your pitching, you need your contact, you need your avoid K to be above a certain threshold. You need good BABIP. So I mean, there's a lot of different sort of basic stats that you can get right off the game as to how your team is doing. But when I'm putting together something like a tourney roster, usually I'm just kind of cooking up these half-brained experiments where I'm saying, well, how would a team that gets on base but doesn't play defense do? Or how would a team that gets on base and has ground ball pitchers and mediocre defense do? And so I'm just kind of going through, my sheet, kind of looking for things that fit certain criteria. But in terms of like what's most important, that would be a better question for API, I think.
What do you think the biggest mistake that well-intentioned and skilled perfect team players make when trying to build a team for a tournament?
Yeah, I think that I don't know. I don't know if there's anything that's a mistake, because you learn from it. Certainly, if your goal is to win maximum packs, or the reward, obviously, making a team that doesn't quite get there is no fun. But um, I think one of the challenges for people who are kind of newer to tourneys or changing formats is they're getting information from so many different people, and it might be difficult to prioritize. Like, well, this person told me that this is the most important thing, and this person. So it's kind of like a telephone game out there
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. And then you have this spreadsheet versus that spreadsheet. Um, so I think just sort of developing some independence where you might also start looking at some things and some data to draw your own conclusions. So I think that sometimes people um, might just be relying on what other people said rather than you know hey, let me check it out. Let me see what works.
Here's an open question for you that might not have an answer. But do you have any unique game theories that you believe yourself to be true that might not be mainstream? You know, we had Pidge on this same show weeks ago, sharing a couple of his, including the Suck Sponge and including a couple of others. I'm curious if in your research, your sandboxing, your silver tournament analysis, all the things that you've done, if you've come up with a couple of things that you haven't heard bandied about as being something that is just widely understood phenomena and something that that you feel to be true.
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't feel like I have any fully fleshed out theories like that, but sometimes I certainly get the feeling that the more adjustments I make, the worse I do. So, it might be, not necessarily like a conspiracy type thing where, the game is, saying, "Oh, you've made your 50 moves already. There's going to be a penalty on every such move going forward." But it might just be that changing variables in a somewhat unscientific way is sort of clouding the vision of because there are very real issues of sample size. If you draw conclusions based on your lefty ace pitcher getting homered off of by a lefty noodle bat in a righty cheese park, you kind of overread into that type of thing, I
Hmm.
think, or at least I do. But um, I don't know. Sometimes I do get the feeling that the more active I try to be, I run into diminishing returns. And I'm not sure if that would be a hot take or anything.
Yeah, no, I think that that's definitely not a hot take. It's something that I have felt myself. Like when I go absolutely crazy and obsessive about pseudo micro cheese, to use Walnut's term. I feel like sometimes or over the course of a day, it's like you've got 4 or 5 games where you just got everything right. You're in the perfect park for the perfect matchup that you have carefully orchestrated, and you're losing those games. How? And that could just be small sample size, and that losing any of those games would make you feel that way, or there could be some sort of mechanical, baseline driven or whatever reason that overactive roster manipulation or roster swaps, roster moves, coaching changes, maybe there's diminishing returns in some sort of actual game engine mechanical way.
Or skill issue with me. But yeah, I mean that totally.
Well, I mean, you turn on the Skill Max Plus, and then that normally takes care of
Yeah.
most.
If only I knew where the switch was some weeks.
So there's a question that I've been dying to ask you, and I think I know roughly what the answer is, but you'll definitely clear it up for me here. Like, what's the deal with mint cards? You're always on the Out of the Park Discord saying, "Oh, I want to buy this card, but mint, we'll pay more for mint," meaning a card that has not been used and played by another owner. Now, why is it that you have such a strong preference for these mint cards?
Well, it takes a lot to become a frog. But I mean, to be honest, I think I might have created a monster. In PT 22, I might just buy any old card. But I've seen it a lot more. I don't know if you've noticed the same thing, but it used to be just I was asking for it.
Mm-hmm.
And now a lot of other people are asking for it, or at least preferring it. And I think, my reasoning is, maybe it's 70-30, functional, practical versus obsessive compulsive, probably.
Mm-hmm.
So the 30, you take your pick, which is 70 and which is 30. But the practical functional reason is that when you get a card that already has stats on it, those stats are going to color your judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to read into what that card did, and when you're looking at data in the subsequent weeks, that is going to factor in to the rest of the data that has been obtained with on your team. So
Mm-hmm.
since I don't really know where the cards came from, or if they're in a lefty cheese park or righty cheese park, or if they're he was using a righty against all righties, or, something like that. I have no way of reading into that, and I'd rather start with a fresh slate so I could form an opinion on the card, how he does, with the sliders, how I have him set, and the setup that I have for him, or it, I should say. It's not a real not a real person, but for the card. And so I would say that's the reason why. It certainly hamstrings me in the auction house because Discord is really helpful, and there's a lot of really nice and helpful dudes in Discord that work with me, and that maybe they're rolling their eyes behind the scenes, and they have right to do that. But without that, I would just be getting cards blind, and I'd have to just deal with it, or not buy cards at all from the auction house. So
Have you
um,
ever had someone arrange a mint card sale to you? You get it, you wait a sim, and you find out it's not mint.
yes, but I'd rather not mention. I'd rather not out said person, because said person is a fairly prolific personage in the OOTP Discord world. But it happens. I mean, maybe they had a bunch of copies and they picked the wrong one. It's
Mm-hmm.
not anything that I would. I mean, I sold it, but it's not something that I would carry a grudge about.
And you explaining your rationale there really resonated with me. And one card immediately came to mind. It's the team of the year, Freddie Freeman, that I'd been playing the last 4 weeks. And I bought it from some random team. I don't know who I bought it from. It wasn't a Discord sale. It was just it's in the auction house and I'm going to buy it sale. And it came to me and it had like 5 weeks of insane diamond stats, like insane OPS, all of them to the positive. And so I'm guessing it might have been a little bit of a softer league. And part of me would just kept waiting for those stats to pop up for my team in DLL. It's like I'm running a Lefty Cheese Park. Where's my 156 OPS plus? And it just never came.
But we love the at bat counter. How many at bats into the week does it take before he gets his first hit?
Yeah.
We're gonna miss that.
Yeah, we'll definitely all miss that as Roger Connor's going to go back to his spot. But we'll find a new game. Speaking of new games and things that are discussed in that DLL private server, why did you join the DLL?
Because Walnut asked nicely. And for you, if you know Walnut, that's a big step for him. But
That's
no, I
very
mean
atypical.
he seemed like a nice guy. He was very outgoing, and I was just like, okay, this outgoing guy who opens a lot of packs says that we're gonna form this competitive league together. And like I said, my team had done pretty well in Perfect Team 20, so I was okay. Well, let's compete. And I think it's that there's been some genius behind that, because it kind of gets us a perfect league light experience with a bunch
Hmm.
of like-minded dudes. And I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Here we are in January, still playing a game that came out last March, and a lot of guys are
That's
still pretty
incredible.
invested into their teams.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you put it and you say it that way, because I don't know about you, but when I pick up a game, I mean, we're talking 3 months, four. Like, if I get 3 to 4 active months out of a game, that's a gigantic win, and that's even including like playing games with like my brothers that I still keep in touch with and play console games with. So the fact that we're sitting here 10 months later and we're all still engaged is just incredible. And then I do have to ask though, like before you joined, obviously you were sitting in whatever random diamond league you were in, and you probably were confident that each week you'd pick up 110 wins or so, and then have your opportunity to try your hand at getting through the playoffs and then go to perfect. So did part of you hesitate to join because you knew it would likely hurt or hinder your opportunity to be at the top of the pyramid, or did you not really care?
That's actually something that I did think about. That was, I think, my main hesitancy, and I be why some other guys haven't joined.
Mm-hmm.
Because basically you're getting through a perfect league to get to the perfect league, to
Mm-hmm.
try your hand. And we have taken some teams that are successful in perfect league and trapped them in DLL for I don't know who. I mean, certainly not you or anyone else like that. But it's a really competitive, really fun league, and I think we all enjoy it. And but we all root for each other too.
Yeah, in addition to rooting for each other, what other elements about the DLL are fun to you? What scratches an itch for you that makes you say, "Man, I love being here and I want to stick around"?
Well, I think the guys that are in DLL, I'm not going to name drop everyone because I fear I'll forget some names, but pretty much everyone we have in there is pretty chill, nice, down to earth, helpful, shares information, sells cards, funny, we go off color in there sometimes or frequently, things that we couldn't say in a OOTP sanctioned Discord, but it's just kind of a lot of like-minded guys having a slice of normalcy in a society where um, you know it hasn't really been socially responsible to kind of go out a bunch.
Yeah, that's a great point. In a year where, I'm sure all of us came into this game with our own social circles and our own friends that we would engage with in whatever forms and fashions that we would. And so much of that got put on the sidelines. We didn't have the ability to go grab drinks every Tuesday night with your buds or to go on and be on your bowling team and go out there and try to throw a perfect game and fail miserably. And so much of that went away. And it's not always easy to take that group and then transition to something digital. Oh, now we're all going to play this computer game, or now we're all going to do this. And like, I know that I personally tried to do that with my group of friends. Like, hey guys, let's play Perfect Team. This seems like a really great idea. And I was able to get two people to do it, and those two people still doing it today. But like the larger group of a dozen, everyone else found different things to do. So, those social circles and those social interactions were shrinking this year, and being able to backfill that with an entirely new social circle, an entirely new game, for me at least, has been awesome and huge. And it sounds like you would share that sentiment.
Totally, 100%. It's just been it's been a fun experience. I'm looking forward to doing something similar, hopefully, for next season. And I can't really. I mean, it's made it so much more enjoyable, to with all the banter and the camaraderie and I like to think that I'm one of the chief instigators in DLL in terms of needling guys and talking about, oh, so and so got relegated again, and
Hmm.
so I mean it's all hopefully tongue in cheek that people don't take seriously, but it's kind of it's kind of locker room, boys will be boys, but it's been a lot of fun.
What has been the absolute pinnacle? You've won DLL, you've won a billion silver tournaments. I'm sure you've won other like daily or weekly tournaments themselves. What's been the single moment that sticks out as like, that was where I derived the most satisfaction, or that's the thing that will be remembered for me from the PT21 game cycle?
Well, there's a few things. I think first of all, one week, I forget when it was, but DLL used to get matched up quite often with BFF
Hmm.
and OL, our league, quite often. It seemed like every other week our friends lists would cross paths. And one playoffs, uh, Quanta Condor and I had a particularly barn burner of a series where I
Hmm.
think I scored something like 7 runs in the ninth inning to
Oh
win the
my
series.
gosh.
But it was one of those series that I really didn't deserve to win. And I think API took me out in the finals though. But that was, I remember just being dumbstruck that I actually had won that, and because I had watched it, and that was one of those series or one of those sims that I watched before I knew what the result was.
Hmm.
And I was like, my guys keep getting hits. Like, what is going on here? Also coming in second in the PTCS for the silver.
Hmm.
I think it came down to 7 games, with an epic Ozzie Smith in there for defense, making an error
Ooh,
in that seventh game. But it was cool to, you know, because when you're thought of as someone who's good at a certain type of tourney, you don't really like to go out in the first round
right.
or flame out in the qualifier. So, I mean, it kind of was some validation that, it wasn't, it's not all just RNG, I guess.
Well said. Well said. So, I'm curious. In any given week, would you prefer to be in the Perfect League or the DLL?
I think there's been so much cross pollination at this point that I'm happy with both. I think the first DLLer that got promoted to Perfect League, it was kind of weird. Like, how would that work? Would the person still be in our Discord, or would they,
Right.
But it's basically at a point where we generally have at least a handful of guys in Perfect League, so we have our own sub channel for those guys, and I would say that I certainly enjoy my chances at flaming out a Perfect League when I get a chance to do it, but
Hmm.
um, they're both competitive and they're both fun and they're both really challenging.
And I think it's cool the sense of camaraderie that you see between those DLL brethren that are up in perfect in a given week. And oddly enough, they keep getting matched up in the same division, so maybe they can get a little lucky next week and not have that same divisional alignment. But we're sending up King Julian, so the population of DLLers is not growing in Perfect League. If anything, it's declining because Chuck and Emmett are having to come back down. But that's always good to see. Here's a question for you: who is the most fun manager for you to beat and why? And it can be for any reason. It can be because you know that manager is going crazy on the other end, or because you know it's a match of wits, or because they're AFK and you can get away with just the sloppiest pseudoing you could ever dream of. But who is the most fun manager to you to beat and why?
Well, I don't know if there is one. I would say that you know API is one who I definitely have to work for my wins,
Mm-hmm.
and we've had some pretty good competitions that usually go his way over the last months. But I also like matching up with Walnut and Snowball and Amphabic because that's usually when there's the most trash talking.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoy that part of making a bunch of boasts that my team rarely backs up, and of course with Mac Jacks as well. So there are a lot of people that I enjoy matching up with.
Yeah, Mac Jax, the dinosaur of the DLL.
Yeah, he was good at one point in time.
I loved how you put in the Discord today that it was kind of a win-win for you. That either DLL stays pure and Julian loses, or you're able to say that. And I can't remember how you termed it, but or
And Mac
we're
Jax still hasn't won DLL. Yeah. So I mean,
yeah.
look, Mac Jax is one of the nicest guys and best players in the game, and this goes back to when we used to post on the message board for PT20. We basically create a weekly thread on the message board, and it was usually Magus who was creating the thread, but we basically update our teams, like we were sideline reporters or something like that.
Hmm.
And that sort of camaraderie kind of carried over, and at some point, it mutated and became this intense hatred that you see now.
Definitely feels intense. It's palpable through the screen. So as we shift and look at the future here, it sounds like you have every intention of playing next game cycle, or is that me reading too far between the lineups here?
Definitely. I think that I will try to spend more time on the base game in 22 because I've sort of lost my connection with that. Um, and at this point, it seems kind of late in the cycle to start up one of
Hmm.
those worst to first runs, or get involved in a fictional franchise. But I think a lot of people are at least saying that they're going to have make it a little bit more of a slow burn
Hmm.
for the next cycle, and so maybe instead of putting in $1,000 on day one or whatever people are spending, it'll be more of a kind of a build up slowly and kind of get there eventually.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and that echoes a lot of the sentiment that I've heard amongst other community members, both inside and outside the DLL. This year was just so unprecedented, and I think that given that people's lives were disrupted as much as they were, and existing entertainment channels were closed off. It certainly made the spend patterns and the cadence of this game different than what it likely would have been otherwise. And I think we'll likely see the leveling of that come in 22. So last question for you. Wait till next year, and Josh, I should say, and thank you so much for joining. But what do you think about a DLL reunion? Or I don't even know if we can call it a reunion. Maybe we need to call it a union. But at a Cubs game in 2021, assuming that someday we're allowed to get back to Cubs games.
Yeah, I'm in. I know Walnut has floated the idea, and maybe going to a Cubs game in Wrigley Field North, as well as going to a Cubs game at Wrigley Field. And I'd definitely be in. I think it would be fun. I think at least for the guys who traveling to the area is relatively easy for.
Hmm.
Assuming it's socially responsible at the time, and there can be fans, and which you got to hope there will be, but
Yeah.
who knows right now.
Absolutely, and I think Wrigley North might have a much better parking situation. So as I think about commuting in from Naperville, it probably actually would be easier and quicker to get home from Milwaukee than it would from 1060 West Addison. Well, Josh, thanks so much for your time tonight. This was a blast, and I could just wax Cubs fandom with you endlessly. But for the sake of the people at home, we'll go ahead and wrap up here tonight. Any closing thoughts for the people?
Well, yeah. First, one, I want to say that it's really cool that Out of the Park Baseball and Marcus and Chris and all those guys have really given us this amazing diversion for this year. And they make a good game, and certainly nothing's perfect, and people have their gripes. But I think that the fact that we're here talking about this, 9-10 months after it was released, shows that people really enjoy it. I'd also say it's been really fun to watch your um, sort of you become a voice face of the community, DRC. Kind of we had this sort of kernel of a thought back in DLL that we should produce some content at some point in time, and we made a channel about it, and then you and your kidneys really took off. And I remember back to your first stream where that we had that lag problem
Hmm.
that resulted in that meme that will live forever. And you guys have really been great at it. I mean, both of you guys have been naturals, and I think that it was kind of shocking how good you guys were so quickly. And so that's really been fun to see, and you're very well rewarded with streaming on the mothership now for the Sunday streams that you do. And last thing I wanted to do is I wanted to apologize for everyone for my background, because Walnut had suggested that I should ride in on an alpaca wearing a sombrero. And this is all I have for you. So
Well, it's a beautiful
apologies for
piece
that.
of artwork. I love whatever's going on with that tree back there, and I'm so appreciative and grateful for the kind words that you've shared about kidneys and my work on Thursdays. I think that the trick was setting the bar really, really low on that first show, and then people think that you're improving when it's not as horrifically bad in subsequent shows. But Josh, thanks so much for your time and your candor tonight. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
And we're back. So that was Wait Till Next Year. And that was a blast. We should only have Cubs fans on the show. No, that was a great time. I'm very appreciative for all the time, thought, and candor that went into that interview. Let's open up our giveaway for tonight. So I'll go ahead and pop it open now. The way to get into it is to type !ticket. It's open now. And by doing so, you will give yourself free entry into a drawing where we're going to give away 30,000 perfect points. 3 people will win. Each of them will get 10,000 points each. The way that you'll redeem those is by DMing me on Discord with your Out of the Park Perfect Team username. And then I'll normally get the points to you by the morning. So again, just want to thank Josh, Wait Till Next Year, for a really fun chat. I enjoyed going down memory lane with our Cubsdom, talking about Sandberg and Grace and Dunston. Really can't do that enough. Honestly, I still talk more about that era than I do about the World Series winning 2016. Maybe that makes me different. Maybe that makes me the same. I also thought it was interesting about how he played the base game, where he likes to rewrite history. You know, who's going to end up being the Homer King? Who's going to take advantage of the heavy pitching eras? I thought that was really interesting and cool. As well as some of the feedback just about the competitive nature and just about really why he brings his shtick to this game. He's just trying to have fun. And this was a year where a lot of us were looking for a way to have fun, and this was an avenue for him as it is for many of us. All right, we'll close down the ticket in 5 seconds here. So last chance to type in ! ticket in 3, 2, and 1. Let's draw 3 winners. All right, our first winner tonight is Ready Defoe. Hopefully I got that pronunciation right. I always like it when I can get through a whole stream without mispronouncing a name. We'll go for another one here. The Real Teddy-O. And last but not least, Jefferson Jim. So congratulations to our winners. Again, to redeem those perfect points, message me on the Discord with your perfect team username with the appropriate capitalization, and then you'll typically see those perfect points come tomorrow morning. Congrats to our winners. Okay, so what's next? Well, on Thursday, you can catch Kidneys and I for another show of This Week in Perfect Team. We've got a whole new set of cards to look at, to break down for you. We are starting to pull into the station. I don't know how many more content releases there are, but there's not a ton. So definitely join us. Check out that show. Let's go through the new content together. And then join the Discord too. So one more time, I'll link the Discord in the chat. There you go. And it's open for everyone to join. And then next Tuesday, who is going to be my next guest? Well, people have been asking for the king for a very, very long time. When are you going to get the king on? We need the king. When can we talk to the king? I want to hear from the king. Well, I have got some news for you. We will have the king come next Tuesday. And it's going to be the same king that just took over and won DLL. King Julian will be on the show talking us through how he did it, why he did it, why did he take the challenge to begin with, how he feels about desecrating DLL and shooting gigantic shotgun holes into any sort of superiority complex that might have existed previously. But very excited for that. If there are questions that you want me to ask him, you can put them into the Discord that I just linked you guys to. That's a great place to consolidate them. King Julian and I will be recording a little earlier than usual this week, so if you do have a question, head right on over there now and get that logged so I can put that as part of the outline. Let us thank our supporters for the night. So we've got West, who dropped 10 gift subs on the channel. Chuck did 6. MacJax 1. Thank you guys so much for giving others the gift of being able to be brought into this community and being able to be part of the show. I really appreciate it. As far as other ways of support in terms of using bits to offer their support, Crash, Walnut, API, you guys are the best. Really appreciate all the support that this community as a whole has shown for the streams that we have on this channel. It's been so much fun. The more reflective that we get with each subsequent show, as it kind of feels like we're kind of getting to the end of the line for this game cycle, and there's going to be obviously a renewed rebirth once we have a new game cycle to jump into. But the more reflective that I get with each passing show here, just the more appreciative I am of how awesome this community is, how welcoming and encouraging everyone has been for the stuff that we do on this channel, and that's really made it all the more fun. And that's made preparing for these shows, building the content for these shows, going through the logistics. I mean, shoot, I had to buy a new computer just so I could stream and have you guys actually see my face, but it's all been worth it and then some. It's been an absolute blast, and I thank all of you for it. And for anyone new to the channel, please do click the follow button, click the notification bell so you know when we go live, and we'll look for you on future shows. Let's see if I missed anything in the chat while I was yapping my big mouth. Oh, you guys thought I was talking about a different king? Oh, that's weird. Bottom of the 6th, do you guys know? So you can prepare for your show. Yeah, so I find out slightly ahead of the general populace as to what cards are going to be on there so that I can build all of the content that we have. Ever so slightly. All right, guys. Well, that is going to do it for us tonight. Again, thanks to everyone for watching. Have a great night, and we will see you on Thursday.